Here's my new setup. Bit of an upgrade from what I had before. Almost everything is new. There's only a few parts I've swapped over from the old scope. New mount is an Atlas Pro. I also got the tripod extension, make it a bit taller. One thing I didn't like right off the bat was the azimuth knobs. They were too close and too small, so I made some new ones out of bolts and aluminum. They're much easier to adjust now. Made a new knob for the right ascension lock too. That was mostly just for looks. New mounting assembly. I went to Los Mandy dovetails since I'm running bigger scopes now. It's a Celestron 16-inch or a 14-inch dovetail, and I've got an 80M dual Los Mandy Vixen dovetail in the center, guide scope off to one side, then a second Vixen dovetail on the side if I want to run a second scope. Guide scope is the same one. It's a Orion 60mm. My dedicated guide camera now was my old imaging camera, which is a ZWO ASI 178 mono. Bigger field of view than my 120, and since it's mono, it's a lot more sensitive, so it works a lot better as a guide camera. My new main imaging camera is a ZWO ASI 1600, which is pretty much one of the best ones out there for the price. But unless I'm doing planetary or I want to do color or one-shot color, this is my main camera. For doing planetary stuff, I'll use my ASI 120. For one-shot color, I'll use my Nikon. My main imaging scope now is a Explore Scientific ED102. It's a 714mm focal length, and that is replacing my 6-inch Newtonian from my mid-range scope, focal length wise. This is the first night out with this scope. I've got my green laser finder. Got my power supply brought over from my old scope set up. It's a 12 volt 30 amp power supply. I got fuses on there. I've got 4 cigarette lighter ports. That way I can just plug in the stock power cable for the Atlas. If I need to, I can still power it from a car. Just plug it in. The other thing I did was for the hand box, I got a Ethernet cable to get rid of the coil cable. Those things are never long enough. Cable management, I got everything pretty clean. I've got 12 volt power, hand controller, and ST4 cable for the auto guider. All anchored so they can't pull out of the plugs, and there's enough slack there that they'll travel with the RA axis when it rotates, so it won't get snagged up. For everything else, I've got it mounted down here, running through a wire loom that goes up to the upper assembly. Have a piece of aluminum angle coming back. I've got a little S-clip to it, so none of the force is actually going through the plugs, so it can't get unplugged if anything tugs on it. Got USB, 12 volt power, and then the ST4 plug for the auto guider, which I have it going through a going through a junction or whatever you call it there. Then they got a small short cable going there. Got a powered USB hub up here for auto guider and main camera. And I got cable, USB cable going back to the main camera, which I've got my filter wheel cable going into that hub. 12-volt power for the camera and a dew heater going up to my power right there. I've got my homemade dew heater set up here. 3D printed the case. I got two 3-amp pulse width modulators inside there. Going to a homemade dew heater on the guide scope. I haven't made a dew heater for the new scopes yet. But that's pretty much it. So far, I really like the mount. It's really heavy though. One issue was it only came with one counterweight. It's supposed to come with two, so I had to email Orion, and they just sent me a new one that arrived like 5 days later. That's pretty much the main setup. Last piece of new equipment is a Celestron C8 optical tube, Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, 8-inch aperture, 2080mm focal length. I kept the 0.63 reducer from my C5, so this will make a good galaxy scope, which I'll be doing a lot of galaxy imaging this spring with this thing. I got the Lost Mandy dovetail for it. I kept the Vixen dovetail on it so I can use it on my AVX mount if I want to. My first light was this scope with the ASI 1600 on the Orion Nebula, which turned out really good for how short the integration time was. I did 20 1-minute exposures. My stuff's getting more expensive, so I thought I should start investing in cases to protect everything when I transport it instead of just throwing it in my car seats. Got a used Pelican case. I just put the foam that the mount was shipped in the case. Fit pretty good. If I put all my counterweights in here too, the whole thing weighs over 90 pounds. So I think I'm just gonna make a little caddy to carry the counterweight separately. And then for my main case, I got one of those cases from Harbor Freight. It's like a Pelican knockoff, but it works pretty good. All my accessories. And I've got my bat dog masks and my flat panel in the back. And the case that my AT66 came in, that's now for my cameras, for the 1600 and my 120, and a couple of adapters, cables and stuff. Now I just need to find cases for the Explorer Scientific and the C8 mount, or the Celestron C8 optical tubes. I don't know if I'll go with Pelican with those. If I can find used ones for a decent price, I'll go with those, but I definitely want to get a case for the optical tubes. I'm all set up for tonight. I'm going to shoot the M81 and M82 Bode's Nebula, which is 2 galaxies, and then later on the Leo triplet if it gets above the trees before it's too late, because I have to work tomorrow. But really looking forward to the first clear weekend night, so I can be out here all night with it and get some serious integration time done on one target.